Speaking of another character that I'm just all the way in on at this point, is they killed it with Elaine this season.
The Hills of Tanchico sequence we have to talk about. Welcome, friends, to episode 345 of the Ink to Film podcast, where we read the book and then see the movie. I'm writer Luke Elliott.
And I'm filmmaker James Bailey.
And this week we discuss the second halves of The Shadow Rising and Season 3 of The Wheel of Time. So this is the one for the diehards, I think. This is the one for the people who are watching the show, who care about the books, whether they're just curious about them or have read them. I think fittingly we are just going to kind of launch into these three episodes, spoilers galore. I won't spoil future books as much as possible, but everything that was in book 3 and 4 will be fair game here, as well as in season 3 of the show.
Yeah, it's our grand finale here. We've been doing Wheel of Time for over a month, I think, right? And
it's right been a journey. It's been a lot of reading. It's been a lot of show watching. Also, as of recording this, I don't believe Wheel of Time has been renewed.
Not yet.
For another season. So this could be the finale of our Wheel of Time coverage. I desperately hope it is not, because I'm really enjoying this show.
And I highly doubt it at this point.
Yeah, I also
think
doubt
that is literally tomorrow. We're recording today. What is it? A Tuesday?
Yeah.
It'll be announced on a Wednesday. I'm sure
You
it'll
think?
Be tomorrow. So I really do feel that with the buzz that the show got, new people are coming to the show. Fans are kind of coming around on it. In general, this is what they wanted out of the show, and it's developed to this point. The only thing I could see happening at this point is some sort of weird Hollywood accounting where they need to cancel something to save on taxes or whatever. But at this point, I think it's safe to say that it will be renewed. At least that's my prediction. And like you said, I really hope so.
Yeah.
Because I am excited for what comes next.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm a little worried that they've made this huge commitment to Rings of Power, and Rings of Power has not been profitable for them, but is I think bound to have 4 seasons or something, right?
Yeah.
And so it's are they going to lose some stuff to try and save costs and try and recoup some stuff? And I really hope not. I hope that they don't look at this and go well, we can't cancel Rings of Power, but we can cancel this other fantasy show we have, because this show's doing better from all accounts I'm seeing, and it is better, I think, as we talked about last time. So I don't know. Who knows what's going on at Amazon?
Not to mention tariffs may cause their whole pride and joy of their shipping, and if that turns into people can't get products from Amazon and all that stuff, that's outside of the realm of the creative stuff that we care about.
Right.
But those are things that could have an effect, and that's if so, that
maybe
would
know more if you're listening to this in the future. You almost certainly do. So we don't know what the future holds with that. All we can do is focus on what we do here, which is talk about books and films and shows, and compare these adaptations to their source materials. So this week we covered the second. It was about the second half of The Shadow Rising, which is book 4 of the Wheel of Time series, and we read that alongside also watching the final 3 episodes of the show. And there's a lot to talk about here. There's some major differences. Things were changed. It seems like maybe they brought in some stuff from future books. But also there's been a lot of just inventions for the show, and I think to varying effects, and I'm excited to get into all of them with you. If you have somehow not heard this at this point, I'm someone who has experience having read almost all of the series before, except for the final book, and James has never read the series until this time, so he's new to it. So I'm going to be relying on you, James, to give me a lot of your thoughts and reactions on things that are happening in both book and show, and how you feel about them.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun. It's for me, it almost feels like I'm going along with some sort of weird release order, because I'm having to wait a year or so in between. Whenever the show comes out is when I get to read another book, or 2 in this case. But yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying it, and I'm hoping that things continue. But just talking about, we talked about last week the fact that things were moved around from Dragon Reborn, and things have been moved around for Shadow Rising for the show. And I talked about this idea of a culmination, and I thought, again, spoilers for book 3, I thought at the end of book 3, he gets Kalendor. I thought that might be the cap on the end of the season. And you kind of hinted at, when I was doing the edit, I was realizing, I'm like, oh, he's like really saying like there might be something just as epic for a finale in the show. And like what's wild is after finishing the book, there is kind of something that's that epic, but the show didn't go there. So the show almost left you at a cliffhanger at the end of this book.
Yeah, we have a lot to touch on with all of that as we get into the specifics of what happens. But I wanted to ask you, like, at least a little bit generally up top, because I'm realizing as I'm revisiting this and watching the show at the same time, because of the way we cover these things, the like sort of canon, if you want to call it that, of like what actually happens in the story we're covering, it gets muddy as they're switching back and forth between these two things, right? And I feel like I'm able to kind of hold on to the books a little bit and go like, oh, this is separate. This is what happens in the books. Are you finding it difficult to keep the two separate at all? Are you, and even like your conception of characters and stuff, do you feel like you have like a book version of them in a show version and they're distinct, or does it run together for you?
Yeah, it's a mix of all of those things. Like I think I mostly read the source material in all of our projects first and then go to the movie.
But it's right.
And it's not until it's not until I watch the movie or the show in this case that it does get distorted some, and it does like kind of like throw me for a loop in certain ways. Sometimes I can really hold on to it. These books are massive, especially this one, the 4th one. And like remember right now, as I read the book, we also had like a little bit of a gap here to where we had more time to read and that kind of thing. So I finished reading a while ago, and then I just freshly finished watching the show. So that feels fresher in my mind, but I do remember distinctly some things along the way where I was like, oh, well, that's different. But as far as like show specific, there are some characters that are like the same in my mind. And then I have show specific Perrin and book specific Perrin, show specific Matt, book specific Matt. But some of the characters are closer together where I'm like Lan, for example, Lon is like the same. I'm like that. Okay. I imagine that actor. I imagine Show Lon whenever I see, him appear in the book.
I agree. Like, there's a lot of characters I have this like notion of that I've had forever that is not really being affected by the show. But then there's like a character like Nynaeve, where I'm like picturing Nynaeve from the show. She does like such a good job and is such a distinct individual that I start picturing her when I'm reading the books now, which is so weird because I read these books for years without.
I do that with Moraine too. Moraine is one for me.
Yeah, Moraine. Yeah. I mean, yeah, she's amazing. So
Swan, like I can't separate some of those characters, but like our main cast of characters, I think like Rand, Matt, Perrin, I would say Egwene, Elaine, even Nynaeve. I think she's doing a great job, but like I don't see her having to do the anger thing really all that much in the show, where that's like so much her character in the book so far.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's interesting you mentioned Lon. For me, he's one where the book version is still very distinct to me. As much as I love what the show version has done with him, it's just a character that remains very distinct. Same with Rand. I agree about Perrin, but like Rand is very much, there's a book version of Rand and there's a show version of Rand, and they don't blend much for me. I don't even really picture the actor much when I'm reading the books for Rand. It's weird. I can't explain it. I don't know why my brain does the things it does, but we said we were going to move right into it, so let's move right into it. Do you have you have some summary for episode, what are we on, 6?
6, yeah. It's called The Shadow in the Night. In a flashback, teenage Liandrin kills her husband and escapes captivity with her newborn before being offered help by Ishamael. In the present, Liandrin kills Naomi, one of her Black Aja, on Lanfear's orders, while Moghedien kills another who is spying for Ravin. Nynaeve, Elaine, Matt, and Min scout Tanchico for clues on the Black Aja and the artifact that could enslave a male channeler. Matt finds one of its parts, but Moghedien steals it from Nynaeve and Elaine after putting them under compulsion to extract information from them. The group also encountered Tom Marilyn, the gleeman who saved Rand and Matt from a fade earlier. In the Aiel Waste, Egwene is confronted by Lanfear in Teleran Riod, while Rand and Moraine discuss their next steps after Ruidian. Later, Egwene and Rand have an emotional argument about Rand's relationship with Lanfear, but they are interrupted by an attack from Samael and Aiel Dark Friends. They defeat the attackers, but a young Aiel girl dies. Rand attempts to resurrect her with the One Power, but fails. In Two Rivers, Perrin and Alana recover from their injuries, while Padden Fane brings more Trollocs through the ways. Posing as a White Cloak, he allies with Dane, with the latter being unaware of his true nature.
So some familiar faces return in this episode.
Yeah. Quite a
People
few.
we had been mentioning were like, where's Tom? Where's Pat and Fane? Where are the and then they both show up in the single episode. So I was excited to see him return. Obviously, like Pat and Fane, big villain. But Tom is a fan favorite. I think a lot of people love Tom, and I continue to love how this actor portrays him, how they're doing Tom on the show, even though he is definitely like a side character who I feel like they could have started to phase out of the show, but I think they know. Rafe Judkins knows people like Tom, and they got to keep him around.
And we can talk about keeping characters around with beloved characters around as we go, because there's a few that go that I haven't seen go as far as
future episodes.
Yeah. but talking about bringing back those characters like Tom, there's a revelation that happened for me. I don't know where it was in the book or the show, and I don't know if it's a misdirect, but I do think that like his connection to Elaine is becoming more and more clear to me, and like some of the history that they share.
So he used to work at the court, or to serve at the court with her mother,
Morghese,
Morghese, and possibly some romance was going on there that is hinted at in the books.
She remembers like him bouncing her on his knee. I think that's a book thing.
Elaine, she remembers like bouncing on his knee and him being around. Because when she first sees him, she just like wants to tug on his mustaches or something. It's like, and she does. I think she does. She just like reaches up and grabs them, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "I don't know why. I just felt like I needed to do that."
And the music, I think the music is a part of it too, right? Like she hears the music and is like, "I've heard this music before," that kind of thing.
Yeah. And we know in the books we talked about his son who could channel Owen, who I think it was who was stilled.
Mm-hmm.
And he's
I thought it was his brother for some reason.
I think it's his son.
Okay.
I could be wrong. I could be wrong about any of this. There's a lot of details flying around out there, but I'm pretty sure it's his son. Ultimately, it's not that important. Tom's just cool. He's got a lot of history. He knows about the courts. He used to be essentially like a court bard, and now he's a gleeman. So he used to be like part of this like higher class, and now he's more of just like a traveling minstrel essentially.
It seems like he was like kind of disillusioned by it, like something happened obviously, and like he was a bard, but he also was like playing the political game kind of from the edges and rumor spreading and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it seems like he has affection still for Morghese. And in the show, he I don't think it's this episode, but he will eventually reveal that Lord Gabriel is not who he says he is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just to say my theory going forward is that they've made it pretty clear to me that he's possibly her father, but not 100% on that. That's just like he has a very paternal sort of thing going on with her right now, and that's kind of where I'm standing with that.
Interesting. So Leandrin, we see flashback 95 years ago. She's a child going through some difficult times, to put it mildly, and we see Ishamael, who I guess is sort of the voice of the Dark One at this point in time, comes to her when she is at her lowest, which is like what the Dark One is kind of good at doing, right? Like this is how so many people end up selling their souls essentially to the devil, aka the Dark One. He comes to you when you're at your lowest and offers you, something to get you out of it, and just for exchange of your soul, no big deal.
A lot of this stuff I was like, oh, this is show specific, or along the way it felt like it might be show specific. Like Leandrin stuff, I was like, I don't think we're going to get some of this background for Leandrin, but in the book we do get a fair amount of it, and we do get like, so it was just cool to see like the show. Every time I thought the show may have been going in like a very show specific path, the book surprised me, and
sometimes
had some
it's
of
there.
elements.
Yeah, it's like there's a backing for it. Maybe they're doing it slightly differently.
In the books, I thought that she was going to become irrelevant, and then she comes back around in here, and it does all kind of thread back together. So the groundwork that the show had been doing that I thought was kind of extra was actually had a payoff coming from the book. But yeah, so this stuff, I love that she's just like in the show, just headshotting motherfuckers, just pew 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 with her little. Yeah, with her weaves, she's just like, that's like, I learned how to do this weave. Bang, just like headshotting people all over the place.
Yeah.
Straight through their temple. That's like her move. And then she does this to one of the Black Aja, like in the present.
Yeah.
The one that I wouldn't have expected. I thought that they seemed like they were working together, but then come to find out, Lanfear ordered it.
Yeah, and there's all this kind of backstabbing going on between the Forsaken, or aka the Chosen.
Yeah.
Turning people against each other. Moghedien is there in the shadows, lurking and kind of weaseling her way in. Which, by the way, I absolutely love what they're doing with Moghedien in the show. She's so fucking creepy. There's that scene where she's like rifling through their clothes and then like sticking her fingers in the food and like spitting stuff into it and stuff. Like that's not in the book, but like it's so good. It's like they really are leaning into this like spidery, just revolting figure of her and making her so creepy. Like the book version has a creepiness to her, but like show Moghedien is so creepy. I'm absolutely loving it.
Yeah, I didn't know if this was something that like in later books was extrapolated on and then like brought into the character earlier, but standout character and standout performance of the season possibly. I believe it's Laia Costa who plays Moghedien, and I mean, she's just like so captivating in all the scenes that she's in. Yeah. Like one of the best.
Those black fingers are so cool too.
So good. And supposedly she's kind of weak, but to me, she's the most frightening Forsaken I've seen up to this point. Like Lanfear's pretty frightening.
It's just like her power level is weak, but like she knows that, so she has to be careful and like operate from the shadows.
Yes. Where Lanfear, I'm getting a sense of like her manipulation and some of the stuff that she's doing and where her tilt into the, like we kind of see her spiral at some points in the rest of the story. I do really like the confrontation with Egwene and Rand, where like they're confronting the fact that like Lanfear he's been having sex with Lanfear, and she's also simultaneously been like torturing Egwene, and like it was cool because I was like, I don't understand why they're continuing the relationship for Egwene and Rand when the book kind of cut it off. It seemed, and maybe it'll come back around, but it seemed that it was being cut off, and then it kept extending in the show, and for this to kind of be the schism makes a lot of sense, and just like she doesn't trust his judgment at this point, and she doesn't like trust him as a person. He's getting to this point where he's going to be unchecked power, because he's going to be so powerful that no one can contend with him, and they can give advice, but ultimately whatever he wants to do, he can do. So now we're seeing there's like a little bit of Egwene be like, oh shit, like I did love Rand, but now he's like something else, and he's going to become this kind of like, you know, absolute power figure that is corrupted.
Well, and I like his sort of read on it too is an interesting one, and I think it comes from later books, but you know, obviously don't quote me on that, I'm not sure. But him saying like, I was never really enough for you. And even though I'm the Dragon Reborn, I'm still not really enough for you. And he's like, I kind of admire that about you. Like, it's kind of awesome, but like, it's kind of the reality, and right? And the show gives them a much more of a sort of dramatic falling out because of the stuff going on with Lanfear. But like, that is an interesting observation in and of itself, and I think there's some truth to that.
Maybe in a perfect world where they stayed in Two Rivers, they may have been good for each other and stuff, but they've kind of outgrown that, each of them in their own way. And I think I've already applauded Jordan and then the show for highlighting this, like the way that like Egwene doesn't seem to be following that, like the typical like, oh, I loved him back then, so we're fated to be together. It seems like she's like worth more than that in the story. Like she's going to go on to do other things, and like I appreciate that because it's not something that you always get in these kind of fantasy stories. That kind of felt like the same, like from Jordan's work and then being demonstrated in the show, where like it's like a good reason for them to break up, and also, yeah, she's kind of not just in the story to be you know, someone on Rand's arm. Now, that's interesting to talk about when he's also going to possibly have 3 women on his arm. Yeah. And I hope
in the books at least. I'm not convinced they're going to go that way in the show. I do think they might go with 2. Curious to see how that develops, because the one thing I'll just go ahead and say now, the show is doing some surprisingly good poly rep, I would say. Like, these poly romances, especially Alana and her warders, and especially like what happens after one of them dies, and seeing the sort of the weird, I guess not weird, but like unusual from the sense of like a traditional relationship dynamic of having one of the 3 die, and now it's like these 2 are left to figure out how they feel about each other without the 3rd one there. Right. It's like, you know, he's always sort of been there. I think he's kind of the link between them. And now that he's not there, they have to almost develop a new relationship.
They almost like don't know each other without the other person there, right? Like, so like while they obviously loved each other in a certain way, like it was always in the context of like the sort of sharing aspect, and for them to be so directly involved with each other and to be the only ones currently, I think some viewers will take it as like losing that person caused them to have like a really specific one-to-one romance. But I almost kind of hope another is introduced again, and like so that they can, because if you're polyamorous, like that's part of like relationships for you possibly. I don't know, it's kind of you know, unique to each relationship and individual, but
right. And it's such such a tricky thing to talk about. Like, it's something I don't know a ton about. But seeing it here, like, it feels like they care about it. And they're trying to not just do it as like a sexy thing or whatever. Like, they're definitely showing it to be like, these characters are having fun and enjoying themselves, but they're like, these are real relationships with, that's how these people live their lives, and they're trying to respect that, I think. And there's some interesting, possibilities with that going forward if we get future seasons in what they might try. And I was thinking about it, and like, I can't think of another show or another movie in recent memory that's high profile that has done polyrep like this.
Something maybe more dramatic or indie would.
Right. Yeah, but not as mainstream as this kind of feels, I guess.
Yeah. But it's so baked into the story, so to deviate from it would also be really weird. So, like, good on them for leaning into
and I'm trying to talk about it in ways without spoiling anything or giving anything away. But it's just interesting, and I hope that we get it, because I think that that'll be something that, like, every show and every story needs to have some things about it that, like, really make it stand out, and this could be one of those things.
Another thing to talk about here is the adventure in Tanchico.
Yeah, we got to talk about Tanchico, yeah.
So Matt wasn't originally on this journey. In the book, he's not on the journey.
Yeah.
He fits really well. First of all, Aelfinn as Matt, I think he's fully sold me at this point.
Yeah.
I like the
he's won me
little
over,
moments that really stick out as Matt. Now, granted, I was kind of bummed because in the season I expected some things to happen because of the books and like some bigger moments, but those are all mostly happening in Aiel. In the Aiel Waste.
You take him out of a lot of what's going on in the Aiel Waste and place him here instead, and it has some interesting effects, right, doing that.
Yeah. It's nice to see him interacting with the characters, and ultimately, like, that's some of my favorite parts of any story is like having characters bounce off of each other. And I think it's cool to see them represented here, but there's also some big moments and kind of some of Matt's viewpoint on what happens in the Aiel Waste was some of my favorite stuff over there. So to lose him there, but to gain him here, I don't know, it's kind of I guess it's almost a wash, but Min. And I think you were right to say that Min and Matt may be developing some sort of romance.
Whether it's a romance or just a close friendship, I don't know. But they definitely seem to be spending a lot more time on developing Min and Matt as characters who have some sort of relationship that we are going to be caring about going forward.
But speaking of another character that I'm just all the way in on at this point, is they killed it with Elaine this season.
The Hills of Tanchico sequence we have to talk about.
It was so funny because like it doesn't happen like that in the there's like sort of some songs and some
there is so I actually ended up watching this episode before reading like this part of the book. And there's like it's very different. There's just at one point I think it's Nynaeve is in the world of dreams and like encounters somebody who's singing the Hills of Tanchico. And it's just like a brief snippet, but it's like line for line some of the song that's in the show, and they took that and ran with it, and they invented this scene with Elaine doing this song. This isn't how it plays out in the book.
Specifically making a song about boobs.
Yeah.
In the Robert Jordan property.
But it is about that in the book. Like, that is what it's about. Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's like maybe more subtle.
It's like the lyrics are the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But like it's the kind of, I don't know, hand gestures and stuff that really sell it in the show, right?
If you're not on video right now, James is grabbing his chest.
The hand gestures.
Yeah, no, they really are like trying to emphasize it in the show.
Yeah,
because it's pretty subtle, and like when you read it in the book, like we don't know these places. We're like Hills of Tanchico. Okay, interesting. It's
so fresh for us at that point. Like we don't understand all of the culture of it yet. And so for it to come at that point in the story, but now we understand and know. But I just think it's like, look, if there's something I know about Robert Jordan from these stories, he likes boobs. All right,
yeah, he does.
He was a fan, and so for there to be a song about it and to be emphasized, and it was done in like a really fun and funny way, and like in a way that was like really embracing female empowerment in that moment and stuff. And I know it's kind of like all in like this like I don't know dark, dreary backstreets kind of place. But it was really funny, and the interaction with Tom, and then Matt and Nynaeve's interaction, and specifically their reaction, so good.
So good. So Tanchico in general, I love the way they brought this place to life. All the veils were really fun. I love that they're giving Nynaeve shit for her like her veil being too ornate, covered in beads and all this stuff, and then like in the next scene, Matt's wearing it. Like it's so perfect for him. Like that doesn't happen in the book, but I totally could have.
I love that it feels like a pirate kind of city or
definitely, yeah. It's definitely kind of Caribbean, yeah, kind of pirate vibes, yeah. But mixes, right? Like, because they also use chopsticks there. Like he kind of I don't know, just kind of scrambles everything to where it's not like one identifiable thing, drawing on from multiple cultures in the real world. But yeah, I think it's a really fun sequence. Definitely loved to see Elaine again continuing to develop here in the show. She's like a major character who arrived in I think season 2, so we haven't had as much time with her. But it's starting to develop, I think, and continue to develop.
We got to talk too. We talked a little bit about Moghedien, but we have to talk about the scene where they have the bracelet, and Moghedien comes in and uses
the compulsion sequence, yeah. Which, by the way, happens in the book. I thought it didn't happen, and I was like, oh no, it does happen. But one of the things Robert Jordan does is he loves to have characters be very mysterious, and like he doesn't tell you who they are. So like this whole part where Moghedien does this, you don't know it's Moghedien. The only clue you get is at one point she says something about being a spider. And if you remember that Moghedien is the one of the Forsaken who talks about being a spider, which, like, if you've seen the show, that seems obvious because she does it a lot. But, like, in the book, there's less.
We get way less Forsaken and way more specifics about the Forsaken.
Yeah.
And the show is kind of ramping all that in earlier, so it's, like, it's obvious. But I read this portion of the book first and then saw the episode, and I was like, holy shit, that was Moghedien that came in and took
so you weren't even sure that it was Moghedien when it happened?
I thought it was, Dark Friend. I thought it was somebody
because
like
that's what he does. Like, he's very vague about it. He kind of leaves, like, you think maybe it's Moghedien because of this one statement that was made, but, like, maybe not.
Yeah, I figured, like, Forsaken more than likely because of the compulsion aspect of what was happening.
Well, plus there's, like, a bunch of Forsaken we haven't met yet, so you're like, is it one of these Forsakens we don't know about yet?
But the scene, the way that they acted in the scene, it was really cool to see, like, Nynaeve, who's always kind of like hard and like stubborn and everything like that, just be like all flowery and here, take it and all that stuff.
And this is one where the book actually does a really cool job of sort of like providing some context for that too, because like it talks about in the book how the way the compulsion works and makes them feel, and it makes them like just like jumping over each other to please this person, and like they want to be the first one to answer, and they want nothing more than to like tell them what they want, and like you can see that in the performances, right? So I thought that was a really cool way that the scene translated. It's very creepy. The way she sort of manipulates them and has them come sit in front of her. She's just in such control.
Yeah, this is one of her better scenes for sure, and she had a lot of great ones. But the way it's super dark, right? When you think about you can do whatever you want and then say forget all of that.
Compulsion is a very powerful and dangerous and dark ability that I think there's a lot of taboos against using. But of course, if you're the Forsaken, you don't care about that, right? So yeah, it is something that the Forsaken are willing to use, and Moghedien is particularly good at it. We know that Lord Gabriel is also good at it because he's convinced Elaine that she's known him for like 15, 20 years or something, and it's like that, that's pretty wild. That's a pretty powerful ability. So it's a very strong magical power for sure.
The show continues to do a pretty good job of showing Egwene growing as this like dream walker or whatever they call it in Teleran Riyadh. I visually doing a lot of cool imagery, and then just getting to see the scenes and how they play out, and then specifically her fights. And well, at first, like, she's getting fucked up, right? Like everybody, whether it's the wise ones or whoever it is, they come in and they just like can throw her out of her dreams or do whatever they want, take over her dream, everything like that. And then she's learning that like she is in control of her dreams, which I think is cool because I've never tried, but like the idea of like lucid dreaming is baked into this, and like being able to like control the things that are happening in your dream, and you shouldn't be afraid of them because you are literally in control of them.
I feel like I've gotten close to that a couple of times, where like I feel like in a dream I'll realize it's a dream, and there'll be like a little bit of time where I have a bit of control, and I become aware that I'm in a dream and I start to have control, but then it like something about that breaks the spell, and then I'm out of the dream, whether I'm waking up or the dream just ends or something like that. It's like something about it like can't exist now that I know that it's a dream, and it pulls me out.
It's interesting because like if I don't know if I realize that I'm in a dream or if I'm just able to have a lot of agency in some dreams, but it's as soon as I feel really capable in the dream, something just like completely absurd happens and like you can't open a door or something, or you know what I mean, like things just like I don't know, weird things stack up, and you're like, all right, I'm not lucid dreaming. Clearly, I'm not able to do this.
Yeah. So we have to talk about Samael. So this is a big difference. Samael shows up at the end of this argument that Egwene and Rand is having, and he just comes crashing in here. He's got a big hammer that he like kind of forms out of the one power. He's got some Aiel with him who are dark friends, I guess.
Which I was shocked about. I didn't realize that there were going to be dark. I mean, I guess it makes sense. There's dark friends everywhere, but
I think they're
Aiel.
everywhere. Yep. And he just attacks Rand and like he's, puts up, he like does a decent job of attacking him, but basically ends up getting bested by Rand. Rand has this thing where he like pulls down the building on top of him.
It was a situation where like he was really formidable, and I was like, holy shit. And he also like crashed in right after Egwene and Rand had that sort of heart to heart and
it's like right at the
breakup, really. And he smashes in. And Rand is like taken back and by all of this, but then pretty quickly is like, all right, it's go time, and he just like completely destroys this guy.
Yeah, I think Samael seems to underestimate him because he's like, oh, you're such a weak version of Lustera, and you can't do anything. And then I think,
but isn't it said in the book or something that, or maybe earlier in the show, or you told me or something that like he's incredibly powerful. He's one of the more powerful.
Yeah, he's supposed to be one of the more powerful. But I think what Robert Jordan is doing here is there's like your power, like your capability with the one power, but then that doesn't like trump how smart you are and like your strategy and like stuff like that. So Moghedien is quite capable, even though her power level may be weaker. Whereas someone like Samael, he's just like very jealous. He's overconfident, and I think it leads to his downfall here. Notably, this has not happened in the books yet, though. So this is obviously a big departure. This is something that I don't necessarily envy Rafe Judkins this, but like it's just the reality of trying to adapt this series. And he's having to make big changes. He's having to move things up. And you got to start cutting down on all these characters because there's so many of them. Like you want to introduce them. Some of them you write them out. We've seen some of that. Gaul seems to have been written out. Like there's some characters like Julian Sandar so far has been written out of the show.
It's been really interesting though to see like the Forsaken especially. They almost switch which one's doing what and why and all those kinds of things, because Samael here, you think he's dead, or at least I thought he was dead, but then it comes back around that. So first of all, this is getting ahead to I think a few late
episode.
I think 8, to a future episode,
this,
but basically like Moghedien comes in and like has this crazy spider web thing of like his blood that's like all coming out of the ceiling. And I'm like, if you're gonna kill a character like Rand, it seemed like Rand did, and then Moghedien comes in and is like pulling him apart, and then she's able to like use his compulsion or do something with him. And then Lanfear shows up and she's like, I'm going to help you if you agree to do this and that. So none of that happened in the book. Because Samael didn't show up, and like, Moghedien hasn't like taken advantage of any other Forsaken that I've seen. But I can see that maybe coming down the line. So for them to just move it up, they like to move stuff up in the show. But one of the major things we have to talk about is when Samael shows up and Rand channels really hard. I don't know how else to talk about what he did, but he like calls down lightning basically, which is something that he does at one point early in book 4. But he calls down lightning, destroys this building that has a super cute kid in it, the Aiel child that we had met earlier that he owed toe to, or whatever I think it's called owing someone toe.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And he had to like pick the garden or something like that, like harvest the garden. And it's this nice back and forth, and she's going to be a maiden of the spear, and all of this stuff is built up, and you're like, oh, this is really cute and adorable. And then he kills this child indirectly, but like by accident.
Yep.
And then just seeing his reaction. And honestly, I think the actor did a great job here. Rand, like the emotion of the scene and him trying to bring back a child from the dead. And that's something that does happen in early in book 4 as well. It's just kind of switched where it happened.
Yeah, I think it's early book 4. Yeah, I guess it is early book 4 because it's defending Tyr, and it's just kind of a random child he finds dead in the hallway. But what the important thing is he tries to resurrect the child, and he's told by Moraine, you can't do that. Like there are limits to what the power can do, and he's like, there's not limits for me. But then he kind of figures out there is a limit. He still can't do it.
Yeah.
And that ends up being sort of,
as far as we know.
Yeah. And that ends up being a sort of a powerful emotional sequence in the show, and I thought I liked that they made it a little more personal. by having it be someone he'd had this relationship with.
And Egwene, right after this big confrontation, is the one to say, Rand, let go. Like, this isn't, you can't bring someone back from the dead. So not Moraine in this case, Egwene. It was really hard to see the characters going through that. And like to see a kid die like that is rough. And you would think like, again, I don't think that we will see anybody resurrect someone from the dead necessarily, but if anyone can, it's going to be Rand. So somewhere down the line, if he gets more powerful, maybe that's something that we're playing with. But again, it's probably like a Dark One ability. It's like an unnatural thing, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, other media would probably tell us that that's not a good thing, bringing people back from the dead. But I want to put a pin in some of this talk about Samael and the Forsaken and what they're doing with them until the final episode, because I think that would be important to revisit there.
Yeah, definitely. So let's move on to the next one then. Episode 7 is called Goldeneyes. Perrin, Alanna, Maxim, Bane, Chiad, and Fail assist the villagers of the Two Rivers in preparing for an imminent Trolloc attack, while also accepting refugees from other regions, including Aram and the Tinkers. Perrin seeks help from the White Cloaks, but Dane turns him down, even though Perrin offers to surrender himself in return. As the battle commences, Perrin and Maxim lead the charge, while Alanna and the village's channelers attack from a distance. After the invaders seem to retreat, Alanna is ambushed and severely wounded, and more Trollocs and Dark Friends force the villagers behind the walls. Aram kills a Trolloc in self-defense, breaking the Way of the Leaf. Dane suddenly arrives with the White Cloaks to help, having changed his mind. Padan Fain turns on him and lets his Trollocs through the gate. In the chaos, Valda attempts to kill the wounded Alanna, but is incinerated by Mat's sisters, who are able to channel. Meanwhile, Loial, Bane, and Chiad head to the nearby Waygate to prevent more Trollocs from entering. Unable to close the Waygate, Loial sacrifices himself to destroy it. Perrin defeats Fain, but shows him mercy, compelling him to recall his army. Keeping his promise, Perrin allows himself to be arrested by Dane while the villagers proclaim him the Lord of the Two Rivers.
So this is a pretty iconic sequence from the books. It's kind of spread out over multiple chapters, but taken all as one, it's the Lord Perrin Goldeneyes defends the Two Rivers moment of the books. And this is something that, like, I adored this as a kid. Again, Perrin was my favorite character. This was, like, the coolest moment for him. I think this is, like, where he really became my favorite character. I love this stuff. I ate it up. I think it is still cool revisiting as an adult. I do think there was a bit of, like, something special about being the age I was when I read it and having this connection with him. But it was still cool for sure. There's some differences in how it goes down in the show, in the book. For one, Fael is sort of newer in the show, so they're developing their relationships really for the first time, and getting them closer, working through the trauma of what happened in the show with Perrin and his wife. Hopefully putting that to bed. This is something that has been, I think, an issue we've had going all the way back to the beginning.
Among other things that the show is like still trying to like grapple and deal with.
Yeah, but I think this was good. This was what I was referring to earlier of like there was going to be kind of a big moment here for Marcus Rutherford, and how I feel about him as Perrin. I think he did pretty good. Like I think this is some of his strongest work he's done so far as Perrin. I liked it. It didn't, I don't know. I mean, I'm just like, maybe this is just like being such a book, fan going way back and how important this scene was for me. It didn't quite rise to that level as much as I did like how it went down, if that makes sense. But I don't know. I guess I don't want to like poison this for you. I'm curious to know for you, because I did enjoy it. I did. Like, don't get me wrong. How did you feel about this sequence in book versus show both? And like, I assume you read the book version first and then saw the show?
I did, yeah. So I said last week, Perrin continued, like, specifically what they're doing with Perrin was one of my major hangups with the show still. I think that, like you said, Marcus Rutherford grew in my estimation as Perrin through this battle, but I think the show did some really interesting and strange things to like focus less on Perrin than the book did. The book did a good job of like, and I know it's like a economy of time thing, but like there's a good like buildup of Perrin becoming more and more of a leader. And here I saw like while he took a lot on himself and he did kind of become the leader, it felt like it wasn't as like natural a progression. And even when he was kind of the leader, it didn't feel like he really took charge. It felt like he was like kind of I don't know, other characters were.
He's always been kind of reluctant.
Moving
He's
him
kind of
along.
reluctant in the book too, right? Like pushing back against being called Lord Perrin, and I'm just a blacksmith. You know, he says in both versions.
But in this scenario, while there are some really cool fight scenes, and while I liked a lot of what happened, and again, I think that I've gotten to this point now through this where I'm like, if this is our Perrin in the show, I'm happy with it. I'm happy to move forward with him as Perrin. I'm happy to see more of this character. But I really do feel like they've done a disservice to the character like throughout. And even this big culmination, like I was trying to get at, is Alana and Maxim, especially. Maxim takes leadership in such a major way in this.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen in the book.
No.
Perrin has a lot more to do as far as like leading these troops and like, while the people of Manethra or the people of Two Rivers, while they take a lot on themselves and they build catapults and they do all this other stuff with other people's advice, Perrin ultimately is the one who like is really, I think, navigating the battle. And it felt like Maxim took a lot of that role away. And even some of the, like the epic moments, like Alana saving the day a lot, which I thought was cool. And I like the idea of like an Aes Sedai, just like, because I think in Varen is the character in the book who's there as the Aes Sedai. That's
They're both there.
fight.
Alana and Varen are both there.
Yeah, and yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
But also, show Alana is getting absolutely wrecked.
And also, she's just awesome. Like, I love Show Alana's really cool. I don't know.
think so too.
As much as we're talking about how it pulls away a little bit from Perrin, you are also giving more to Alana, giving her more to do, making her more of a memorable character than she is in the books.
Definitely true. And she can take a beating. Like, I'm like, holy
she gets
shit.
wrecked repeatedly.
She's getting like, I mean, just like the stabbings that are happening,
Yeah.
the puncturing of like arrows and stuff, and then like having to get like Matt's sisters to heal her and stuff. And you think she's dead at one point. You're like, oh, they can't heal
repeatedly.
her. She's done.
They've acted like she's dead, and then she ends up coming back.
Yeah, I do like Alana's like through line too of like finding these channelers that are not like necessarily what the White Tower would be looking for, and then like kind of like we're in a war, so you got to learn on the fly and like help. All of that stuff rings pretty true to me. But like, I guess just to put a cap on this, I think it just does a disservice to Perrin a little bit here with like, it really was, at least in my estimation in the book, very much in his POVs, and it was like, this is Perrin's battle, this is Perrin's moment to shine. And while this giant cast of characters and all these cool actors that are here, I think they're because of the nature of a TV show, and I want to retouch on this in a little bit, but everybody needs to have moments. And this was Perrin's moment in the book, and it became everybody's moment, and it kind of just like detracted a little bit. I liked it. I liked the fight. Yeah. I liked the battle overall.
I did like it too.
I really want them to make good on Perrin, like getting to I don't know what his battles are coming up, or any of what his role is in the story going forward. But
one thing I wish they would do a little more with him is lean into the Wolf brother weirdness. Like the powers are
I know that it didn't happen in the book, but where were the wolves at? I know that like the White Cloaks killed most of them in the area, or like this, I guess Slayer, do we get Slayer in
no
the
so
show?
The other thing we don't get is any of the wolf dream stuff, because like we're not getting a lot of like wolves in the real world in the books at this point, but we are getting tons of wolf dream stuff where Perrin is showing that he has a lot of this wolf, I guess it's like related to his wolf brother nature, but his power to dreamwalk is very similar to Egwene, and he's developing it in sort of parallel to her. And I think that that's like an important part of the character. It's something that he's quite good at. But then the other thing is like his like extreme senses, his wolf-like nature. Like it doesn't come across in the show a lot. Like I love in the book, he's starting to be able to identify people by smell without like seeing them. Like he knows who they are because he can just smell them, and like things like that are really kind of unusual and cool about Perrin. I just feel like they were not leaning into that enough for me in the show.
I know this isn't necessarily like reinventing the wheel, but I kind of want to see him become like more bestial, where like in the show where he's like he'll like sniff the air and like look around. Like we're not getting those kind of moments where it's like he's like a superhuman at this point, and he needs to like reflect that. Yeah. It's like if Trollocs are coming, he needs to be like the one to say, "Hey, on the wind, there's smell," like that kind of stuff. Like we need those moments to build up, and that's outside of like what you're saying. The wolf dream stuff is just as important to Perrin as the Tell Around Riyadh stuff is for Elaine, which I think it's all connected, but that's wild. They have to do that next season. They have to like really lean into more of that.
I hope they do. And like admittedly, a lot of this can just be explained by not having enough time, which by the way, I saw other people elsewhere have written about how this show really feels like it needs 10 episodes. And I totally agree. Game of Thrones, for the vast majority of its run, had 10-episode seasons. Like, why is the show not getting 10 episodes? It's like a weird thing. Apparently, Amazon just like gives 8 episodes and that's it to like every one of its shows.
Well, it became a thing as Game of Thrones got more expensive. They did less episodes because of the time to produce the CG and the budget for a lot of that stuff. Yeah. And so I think they cut down the seasons and they split them up over
suffering,
like larger periods of time.
Especially when you're adapting these massive novels. That's the one thing that continues to be an ongoing criticism I have of the show, but like I understand why it's happening. It has to happen, but like the pace still feels breakneck to me. Every scene like it leads into something major, like characters aren't getting time to like live in this world and like have moments of peace and have, you know, levity with each other, and or if they do, like that scene always has to be bookended with something crazy happening. And like I get that part of that's just how TV is, but like I just miss a little bit of that. Like it just, the pace just feels so fast. Everything has to happen so fast. I wish it wasn't quite the case, and we could just stretch it out a little bit.
I think at one point in the season, maybe last episode, I felt like they had found a pretty good pace. And then I felt like leading up to the end, because I just didn't know what was coming. I didn't know if they could do it, and I was surprised at what they were able to pull off. But like you said, it's the pace, like especially the last episode, which we're going to talk about in a second. I can't believe how fast the Aiel stuff happens. I can't believe how fast the Tanchico stuff happens. But also I almost feel like for budgetary reasons cut off the most effects heavy portion of what was going to come with like the final confrontation.
Yeah, we'll get back to that. Well, let's talk a little bit about Loial here, as I think an important change here. And
R.I.P.
So Loial in the book does something similar. He goes and he closes the gate, but like doesn't have to sacrifice himself to do it.
Yeah, and it's also like off page a little bit. Like it's like it's happening. We hear about it, but it's like it's not something that we're like actively in. But following these Aiel maidens of the spear and him, it was cool as hell to like go see them have this final stand.
Yeah. Bane and Chiat, I love what they're doing with him and them in the show. By the way, they ended up sort of Gaul, I think, gets written into them. They kind of take on the role of all of that, but like they're so good, they're so compelling. I love their sort of playful attitude they have with everybody, really, but then especially with Loial and the whole joke about him agreeing to do Maiden's Kiss, and
yes,
and then that ends up being kind of like a trick that he's playing in order to like erase the toe. I just love all. It's very, very clever.
And then they kind of flip it back on him. I love the honor aspect of the Aiel, and specifically the maidens, and like this going out and seeing that a lot of the fight scenes were really cool, and Loial with like weapons in his hand.
Yeah,
like, that's
I did love
awesome.
him just slamming people with a hammer, knocking them up in the air and stuff, just being powerful as hell.
But then we get into, and I thought maybe Machen Shin was going to become involved, and it seemed like he might.
I thought too, maybe he was going to summon it somehow. I kept expecting maybe he was going to do that, and I'm like, how would he summon it? I don't know.
And then the Trollocs are on their way, and then there's this moment where he realizes that he's going to need to knock this down, which is also in its own right. It's pretty badass. Like it's a cool moment where Loial gets to have this big sacrificial moment. Very Gandalf, very like you shall not pass.
Yeah, it is actually.
And to I notice, we don't see a body. Could he be somehow surviving in the ways? Maybe, but he's more than likely dead.
I think he's dead, man. I don't know how you survive that.
Yeah, neither do I. But because I don't know how the ways work in general.
You thinking he's falling down and fighting a Balrog and coming out on top of a mountain? We're having Loial the White one day.
Yeah, he flies out on an eagle, and yeah. But anyway, he has that. He's just smashing, and I didn't know you could do that with the ways. By the way, I didn't know you could destroy a way gate. Yeah,
this is a show thing, I think.
Yeah, but they seemingly destroy the gate in some way in the book as well. We just don't see any of that. So yeah, and it was really sad. I didn't want to see that character go, and he's not gone in the book. So I don't know. I assume that in the later books, he's going to die in some way. Yeah. But we'll see.
So this is going to be a very slight spoiler, because it's an unspecific, sort of vague spoiler for the rest of the series, but something Rafe Judkins has said in an interview that I wanted to share. So if you want to, if you don't want to hear it,
one of the ones at the end of the episodes, because I was going to talk about this.
Oh, I didn't watch them. You said this is something you watched?
Okay. Yeah, they're like little behind the episode kind of things at the end of the episodes.
Cool.
Yeah.
No, I didn't watch any of those, so I don't know about this. This is just something I read about. Maybe he said it in one of those, though. But if you don't want to hear this, skip ahead like 30 seconds. So he said, quote, Robert Jordan loves his characters so much that he lets them all just collect and they go to the last battle. Like everyone makes it there. Judkins told The Wrap. which is wonderful for a book series, but is not something that's practical when you're casting actors. So our first and foremost focus is that when they are with us, they're doing something significant and not just standing off to the side of a scene. We can't really do that. We have actors who are too good to do that.
Yep. So this is like along the lines of what he talked about, and this specifically gets into some of the stuff that we'll talk about with Sawan as well.
Yeah, and that's what we're leading up to, because that's another big change. But like, yeah, I mean, this is just something that happens in adaptation. I was talking to my wife about it. It's like they're paying all these actors. Sometimes you have characters who just come and go from the book series, honestly, and they'll disappear for several books and then come back. And it is something that as it went, Robert Jordan just kept adding and adding and adding more and more characters, and in my opinion, wasn't killing enough of them off. And I know that sounds brutal, but just like as an author, it's like, if you're going to add that many characters and you're having all these wars, like, have some people die. But it seemed at a certain point like he didn't want to do that. Like, he loved all his characters so much that often you'll see them, they get beaten, but they don't end up dying. They get, they end up coming back in some other way, and like, it just becomes pretty rare. Not to say it doesn't happen. So I don't want to, again, this is not a spoiler because I'm not giving any specific fates for anybody, but this is one with Loyal where, Book Loyal is alive. And they kind of wrote him a finale here in the show, and I think it works. And this is the kind of stuff that it's always going to be a controversial decision to make, but I think you're going to have to do it.
And I can understand, obviously, from a production standpoint, like, that's a character that has a lot of makeup, prosthetics.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to I'm sure, even act in it, all of those things. I think that him and Animation did a great job.
Agreed.
With all of that being said, like being in all those prosthetics and making a lovable character. I think that one thing about Loyal is that he's the kind of character that I could see at the end of the story, like I mentioned before, like being the one to kind of tell the stories of these characters, and he's writing these books, and like that to me feels like a reason for him to be around. And this feels like a brutal death because it is kind of the death of innocence in a lot of way in the show. Yeah. And like a character,
but it's self-sacrificial, so it's also a noble death.
Yeah. And I also do, like I said, maybe he's still alive. I think that would be a cop out, and like it's like, why that would be so TV for him to come back. But I think with Sawan, and again, I'm speaking way out of turn because I don't know what happens with these characters, but I could see the trajectory in like a Tolkien-esque story where the Loyal character makes it to the end. He's a non-human character. He's like, so he has that like aspect and lens on the world. And he's just like a fun, lovable character. He's like a Treebeard type character. Like they make it, and like they have a lot to add to the story. So for him to go down was shocking and quite sad.
Big change, big emotional sequence. I won't say anything about what I may or may not know. So Padan Fain, here at the end of this fight, Perrin lets him live. And sort of in exchange for pulling the Trollocs out and not quite finishing off the townsfolk. This is very different than how it goes in the book. In the book, like the Two Rivers, people just kind of win and drive them off. Ordeith never really comes in. He kind of lurks in the woods, a.k.a. Padan Fain, and survives in a different way. So this is kind of an interesting moment where it's like it's a bit of mercy, but also you could say like there's a smart move here by Perrin, who could have, in a short-sighted way, just killed him, but saw a way to like save lives by having them call off all the Trollocs. That at this point we're still like kind of winning the fight, or at least like driving them down to the last man. And he didn't want everybody to die, so he thought, this is a way I can get this to end, and that means even letting Padan Fain live. Of course, you wonder like what if he might come to regret that in the future, right?
Yes, yeah, I would assume so. But yeah, it felt like that it was again a moment where I was like, I understand that Perrin wants to not be the killer,
yeah,
but he's been doing a lot of killing in this episode.
He has, yeah.
And then he gets to a scenario where he's got the leader. And by the way, the guy who plays Padan Fain is awesome. I think he does a really good job with it.
Small amount of screen time this season for sure, but he's
very effective though. But yeah, so there's this moment and he has him on the ground. He could definitely have killed him if he wanted to. It felt like the mothership moment where it was like, call off all the bad guys and we'll end it very quickly, or like where the mothership blows up and all the aliens die.
Yeah, I mean, if you kill Padan Fain, do they all leave anyway? We'll never know, I guess.
Because it doesn't happen how it happens in the book, I have to compare it. And in the book, it just feels like more believable to me. Whereas like Perrin, and again, I guess in the show, his family wasn't just killed by Padan Fain.
Yeah.
I think if book Perrin got his hands on Padan Fain, I don't know that he survives it.
Anyway, he doesn't kill him. Yeah. Plus, he doesn't know. So that's another difference too. But another big difference here, because we're talking about the differences in this fight and how it ends. Stuff with the White Cloaks in the book and in the show, both Perrin agrees to turn himself in at the end of the fight, and notably if the White Cloaks help, right? And in the book, the White Cloaks don't help. They stand around in the town square while everybody else is fighting because they're like, I'm not going to be fooled by you, dark friend. I know that this is all a trick. And they're just dicks to the bitter end. And so Perrin is like, fuck you, I'm not going with you. You didn't fulfill your half of the bargain. You didn't help us fight. And they leave. They get basically turned away. And in a big change, Perrin in the book or in the show, says, I gave you my word. They did help fight. So he says, I'm going to go with you. And he turns himself in and goes with them at the end of this episode.
That felt very Perrin to me. Like actually giving himself up felt very Perrin. I thought it was interesting because I read it first. I was like, oh, okay, so it's not even a factor because they're dicks. And this leads into some of what we talked about with the White Cloaks, where it's like they continue in the books to just be like manipulated by the Dark Friends, super fucking stubborn to a point that they're unreasonable. All of that is happening, and I'm like, there's some nuance at some point. There's gonna be some nuance, but in the show, it started to come in, and with the way that they did help, and there was this honorable agreement, and then Perrin going with them. I'm like, I like it. I think it was a cool change, and that I genuinely did feel very Perrin, and the way that they were calling him, Lord Goldeneyes and Lord Perrin of the Two Rivers as he's in shackles on his way out of there. I'm like, that was pretty effective cool, storytelling. Man.
You know what I also really liked, and this is a simple thing, but seeing the red wolf banner get unfurled, that was just so cool. It's such a cool moment in the books, and they really did it well in the show. The Lord Perrin stuff is really cool. I don't know. I love to see that.
And if we're talking Perrin, we got to talk Fael. Isabella Bucheri, I think, continues to be really, really good. To the point where I'm like, I hope she's actually kind of elevating Perrin in my estimation a little bit too. The actors, they're bouncing off of each other well. And in the book, they get married. Leading up to the end of the battle, I was like, "Holy
That's
shit!"
Another big change. Well, I was actually leading up to this earlier, and I forgot to say it, but they have just met each other really in the show, so it doesn't really make sense. But in the book, they've known each other for they met each other last book essentially, right? Yeah. They've been together for a little while now, and he has this whole thing where he's trying to send her away, and one of the ways that she agrees to do it is if he'll marry her, so they get married. But then she ends up not getting sent away anyway, and
well, no, she does, but she ends up going to get neighboring armies, neighboring allies to the Two Rivers, and they come to help in the battle rather than the White Cloaks, which I kind of like.
Yeah, so it's cool. I mean, it's a difference, but I agree. I love what she's doing with Fael. I think this is everything I could have wanted from this character, because there are times where I think people get a little frustrated with this relationship, but I think this is when it's at its best, and I think we're seeing that in the show. I think they're doing a good job of putting it on the screen in a way that is going to work, I guess. One thing I will say too is, and this is maybe the lightest of spoilers, but for the books, Perrin isn't done with the White Cloaks in the books. So I think it makes sense. It's just an acceleration, right? You're in the books, he gets this reprieve, he sends them off. But at some point in the future, there's going to be some more White Cloak stuff with Perrin, right? This hasn't gone away. You can kind of foresee that coming, right?
Yeah, it really does feel like the White Cloaks are Perrin's stuff to deal with.
And so we just say we're moving on to that. It's happening right away. We don't have time to dather, to hang out in the Two Rivers for very long. We got to keep this thing moving along, right? So yeah. I think that's all this is, and it makes a ton of sense for them to do it in the show.
Cool. Yeah, glad to hear that.
Oh, and one more thing about this episode. Lord Luke was introduced earlier in the show. He shows up with Fael, right? And then he's just gone. He doesn't really do anything else in the show. In the book, he's Slayer, because Perrin shoots him in the dream, and then we hear that Lord Luke came running out of the inn or whatever with the injury from the dream.
I do love to in the book. Perrin is are these two things correlated?
Yeah, right. Maybe. Yeah, well, because I guess in his defense, he doesn't necessarily know how the dream world works, whereas because we know through Egwene how it works, we're yeah, dude, it's related. But it's just interesting that they still included Lord Luke, and yet none of that really happened. We didn't really do anything with that.
I felt super present to him being in the Two Rivers and all of that stuff. So he's leaving the Two Rivers now with the White Cloaks. So like maybe granted somebody could break him out of the shack, they could catch up and fight the White Cloaks and get Perrin back or whatever. But like it was like specifically about what was going on with the Two Rivers, because he was like influencing things and trying to get, I don't know what his goal was, because he was like kind of telling villagers how to protect themselves but doing it in a bad way.
Yeah.
And then
he seems to be like some sort of dark friend or something, extremely powerful in the dream world is what we hear. And that's I think it's really just like a side effect of us not developing any of this dream stuff for Perrin. And it's unfortunate. It's like, if you're not going to develop it, then I guess you can't really do the Lord Luke Slayer stuff, and that all just falls by the wayside. But it's just weird that the character's still there at all at that point.
But will they in the future, maybe, because like
know.
he is there? I don't know.
Maybe. You're probably just moving on at this point, and Lord Luke will just be, I guess he just wandered off at some point.
Yeah.
I don't know. Who knows?
All right, so episode 8 is called He Who Comes with the Dawn. Nynaeve, Matt, Elaine, Min, and Tom enter the palace in Tanchico in search of the artifact. Elaine and Tom are attacked by one of the Black Aja, but Elaine kills her. Stepping through an arch, Matt is transported to a mysterious realm where an Aelfinn, a fox-like creature, grants him 3 wishes and in exchange hangs him from the arch. Min saves Matt, but he finds he has lost some of his memories. Nynaeve faces off with Liandrin and overcomes her channeling block, after Liandrin nearly kills her. Liandrin gets away with the artifact and makes a deal with Moghedien to enslave Rand. In the White Tower, Elaida effects a coup and is declared the Amerlin seat. Siwan is falsely condemned as a dark friend and executed. In the Aiel Waste, Moraine plans to force and imprison Samael to train Rand in channeling, but Samael is murdered by Moghedien. Rand rejects Lanfear, prompting her to turn against him, ally with Ravin, and position Coladin, leader of the Shaido clan, as a fake Karakarn. Moraine and Lan fight Lanfear, with Moraine emerging wounded but victorious and Lanfear severely wounded, fleeing. Rand convinces the Aiel to follow him by revealing their history as Oathbreakers and summoning rain in the dry waste.
Yeah, man. So much to talk about here.
This was supposed to be 3 episodes.
A lot of huge events. Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of can't believe that all the stuff that happens at the tower happens at the same time as all this other stuff, and like it doesn't feel like it gives enough weight, because this is a big part of the book which we haven't talked about yet. I've been waiting for this, but let's focus in on that. At the very start of the book, we knew something was coming at the tower, and you thought it could be the Shan-Chen attacking, but it was this.
We didn't get all of this in the book yet, though. Like, we got some of it. It's just like it's done differently.
Well, it's different because Siwan isn't killed, and that's different. She's stilled in the book, and she ends up escaping. But we get the rebellion of the younglings. A lot of it we don't see directly, but we hear about. Gawain helps them out, but he also seems to have been fighting other warders. There's a big fight and it's sort of a breaking of the tower that goes down. And Elaida is installed as the new Amerlin.
I mean, I thought for sure it was going to be. There's a bunch of stuff going on here. For one, I was under the impression that Elaida was a dark friend at first. Then there was the whole scenario where it seemed that she wasn't, because she was kind of against the dark Aja, the black Aja, and then she's kind of her own threat to the tower. It seems like she's like the red Aja have all come together and they threaten the tower, and they kind of have a coup here. And Siwan in the books and her Lien, I think. Something like that. Her like second in command, they're stilled, and then Min makes it to them, helps them escape, along with Gawain, who like I think he writes them like the same kind of letter that Siwan had given, where it's like, yeah, listen to them, they're under my command. So they're able to get away. And the other crazy thing is that they find Logain along the way.
They just find
Logain.
Like, he's like hanging out on a ship.
I'm like, all right. I'm like, all of these characters, that's going to be a crazy storyline going forward as they like kind of run away from what's going on at the tower. But what's going on at the tower in the show especially is insane, because we get the Red Aja come up and they're doing Black Aja shit. They're like, why don't we just fucking cut our competitor's head off and like just say that's cool and hope that the tower survives all this. Meanwhile, she's saying like the tower has to accept Rand or fall. So I can imagine that this is like going to be a shadow of the former White Tower, with like Red Aja kind of running the show, and maybe they'll have some power, but it's probably going to fall even more than it already has.
Well, and in the books it said that all the blue Aja have been driven out. Like they're all gone.
Yeah, and most of the greens.
And yeah, most of the greens, yeah.
And then I think the rest kind of split half and half, it seems, or something along those lines.
Except for the red, so like all the reds.
Except for the red, they all say, yeah. Crazy. Didn't expect that to happen. And yeah, I guess to talk about Swan, I again, Rafe Judkins talked about how economy of actors on screen and having these characters. I don't know what happens with Swan, but clearly she's off to do important things. She's been stilled.
Yeah.
But to kill her here, it was really impactful. And then to mirror that with what Moraine is doing, and Moraine knows in the moment where she's fighting Lanfear that Swan has been killed, and like has like a, you know, a reaction to it. And yeah, it was crazy to see Lanfear and her battling, and that to be something that like kind of compels her on. And like I don't know, Moraine, obviously we talked about too, is like kind of marked for death at this point, and I thought at one point she was gonna die, but we are still carrying forward with her, right? She seems like she's surviving it.
It seems like it, right? Like I don't know. It's interesting. I don't we'll have to track that and like what they end up doing with Moraine. She's a big star of the show.
Yeah.
You know, it makes sense to play it out this way.
There is a part of me that thinks like if you do, I mean, I don't know how it goes down in the books, but I think if you do kill Moraine, then you let the other actors shine, and it kind of is like that, you know, Gandalf moment where it's like that person was so important to the plot and they were so much protecting our main characters, and for them to be gone, it's like the safety net is gone, and then moving forward, everyone kind of gets more screen time and more time to shine, and it seems like Lan has a destiny to they've built up all this stuff about like what if Lan, you know, he no longer had his warder bond for Moraine and all that other stuff. So
well, let's focus back in on Suan, because I think this is something definitely we're talking about. A lot of the fandom is reacting quite strongly to this because, as you said in the books, she's alive. She survives the being deposed at the tower. She's stilled, and then she goes on to have more story. Suan does more in the books. Judkins ended up addressing this. I believe he talked about how there will be another character who ends up taking on some of the things that she does later in the book series, and that's just an economy of character things we've already talked about, some of those reasons why that's happened. But I want to touch in on another thing that I think is rightfully being raised, and I think Judkins was very aware of and wanted to address with some statements made, and this is in that same article, so I'll end up sharing this in the show notes if people want to read it themselves. But he was talking about how there's definitely a history of queer characters being killed off in movies and in TV shows. And he recognized that in the change to make Moraine and Suan's relationship a queer relationship in the show, it poses a particular problem if you're planning to actually kill off Suan, as he ends up doing here. And so this is what he said about it. He said, "We knew going in that we'd have to do that." That's killing off one of them. "So we could either not make them lesbians or see one or both of them die. I think seeing their love was the right choice." So he basically said, like, he could have not gone the lesbian angle, but then killed them and sort of protect himself from that criticism. But then he felt like it would have taken away from seeing this love on screen. And I agree. I think there are times where you can look at problematic tropes that have perpetuated through time, that come up time and time again, but you can't look at them as hard and fast rules. I mean, just think about, I won't say anything spoiler, like that will spoil it because you don't know specifics, but there's an episode in season 1 of The Last of Us where some prominent queer characters meet some similar fates, and like there was some pushback when that happened about, oh, you know, killing off gay characters, but like that's like everybody's favorite episode. It's stunning. It's an amazing piece of television, and I think the same is true here, where like, I'm glad that we got this element of their relationship, even though it results in leaning into that trope of having a queer character die. I think this is a time where like the overall positive of it still works, and I think it just really works for the story to where you can't worry too much about that trope. So I'm kind of with Rafe here, and admittedly, I'm not the one who's most affected by this. So I grant that I'm not the first and last voice you should hear about this. Definitely, I want to make space for other people to weigh in on it for sure. Yeah, and honestly, I hadn't even thought of that angle because like those characters are more than the label or that like the sexuality to me. Like I'm more so worried about like what Swan had left to do in the story and like how that's might be changed going forward. But that's not, I don't know. So maybe it's not that big of a deal. And like you said, maybe this other character can fill those gaps. But yeah, I mean, it's like, I think if you're doing, it's like a net positive, I would say, like to represent characters like this
And like it is in a similar way to that episode that you talked about from The Last of Us. Like it's incredibly heartbreaking. Like that relationship was one that I was really invested in between Moraine and Swan. So it makes it all the more powerful. Like going forward, seeing Moraine's reaction to it, I think that's why she wasn't killed off maybe necessarily right now.
I think it's also one of those things where it's like creatives, you know, in these writers. Like I know I don't say this to excuse, you know, everything that writers do, because clearly it shouldn't be. But like sometimes you just have to make decisions, and like if you're too worried about stuff, sometimes you can put yourself into a bind trying to not upset anyone and like make sure you're not, you know, doing too much. And like it's always a balance, right? Like you want to be aware of that stuff, but also not be afraid to make bold decisions if it's good for the story and it's good for the product and it's good for the purpose of what you're doing. And I think, to me, I think this was a decision that was made in good faith and had value behind it. I am open to dissenting voices. I would be curious to hear. But you know, at least for me, it worked.
Yeah, I agree with all that.
So let's move on though, because there's a lot to talk about here still. Let's talk about some of these Forsaken changes. So in the books, there is a Forsaken named Moghedien, who has a large role to play here at the end. Some of what's going on with him, I guess you could say, happens with Samael here, but not even really. Like, it's pretty dang different. Samael attacks and is bested, and then is captured, and Moraine says, "You're going to teach Rand how to use his powers," right? And that's like the plan going forward. But then Moghedien comes in and she's like, you're going to teach me how to kill a Forsaken. I want to know how to do that. And then she does the thing, she like pulls all his veins out or whatever, and it looks fucking cool. So very different in the show, but like in the book, like, oh man, he goes through a gate. And he chases Moghedien to Ruidin.
He literally uses like a portal. It's so funny because like Jordan did a great job of like helping me forget that, or I just forgot that. He had already done that because he saw like Balsamon do that. Mm-hmm. And then he does it again because he sees Asmodean doing it, and he chases after him, and they have this fight in Ruidin and all that stuff. And then ultimately like sees the connections of the Dark One, it seems, and like stills him from the Dark One.
Yeah, he severs his connections to the Dark One. So his like oaths to the Dark One are broken, which is not something we knew could be done. So that's pretty crazy.
And I think Lanfear was like, I didn't know that could be done. I'm like, why don't you just do this to all the Forsaken you come into contact with?
Well, and partially, he also like he has he's controlling that or the Saw Angriel that gives him like supreme power for the male part, which we haven't even seen in the show yet. Like we've seen the female version, I guess, that Moraine has.
I always imagine it as like a little Buddha statue.
That's what it's described as in the book. It's like a little statuette. And there's reference to like another statue that it's like connected to, which like I don't know if you fully understand yet, but like it's talked about that way. But I one of the things I love about this book sequence that we don't get in the show is that it was like one of the first times where, I mean, it really felt like Jordan was flexing his imagination for like what could be achieved with the one power. Because there's wild stuff that happens as they're fighting. They end up like leveling mountains around it. Ruidin is like tilted, and like there's like a fissure in the ground, and there's a river that flows out and creates a lake. But there's like walls of fire that get repeatedly shot at him that are like a mile wide and a mile tall.
Speaking of fire too, the tree catches fire, which I was like, oh shit, for the Aiel. And then like I don't even know if it's addressed that they like put the fire out, or like is it not important to them anymore?
I think it's still there. Yeah, because I think he's glad that like it wasn't destroyed. I think at the end he says so. I think it is still alive.
Because like does it still have? I mean, historically, I guess it still has the significance. But since the Karakarn is here, like it feels like a lot of the Aiel stuff is like their whole like kind of worldview is breaking in a lot of ways because he reveals.
Yeah. Well, he's fulfilling the prophecy of destroying them. He reveals the connection with the Aiel and the Way of the Leaf to everybody, which is in the show. Yeah,
like literally to a T. Like the show ends with him basically revealing.
Yeah, he makes it rain,
creating
which
rain,
he does in
and
both,
then it ends.
Yeah, so we don't get any of this Asmodean stuff. One of the other cool things, Asmodean like creates a shield around himself, and then like Rand has to fight through it. Anyway, so one of the cool things I thought about it was like, we know that he eventually now, because he at the end of this fight, Lanfear shows up. Asmodean has been broken off from the Dark One, and he's shielded but not stilled. and he like agrees basically to go along with Rand and like teach him. And so we now can see like all this shit that we just saw Asmodean doing, like we're in theory is going to be teaching Rand how to do that stuff with the power. And like he's doing tons of stuff we hadn't seen people do yet. So this is one of the other really cool parts of like, oh wow, he's about to start leveling up like crazy in his ability, and he's basically got a Forsaken that is just like hanging out with him mentor. Now. And he's like, I can't trust him, but if he can teach me stuff, then it's worth it. He kind of knows like this could be a problem in the future, but for now it's worth it. He had been incognito as this Gleeman who had showed up to talk with the Aiel and all this stuff. So like much like the Forsaken love to do, they just like to show up and pretend like they're just random people, and then they end up being Forsaken.
And it's wild to not get this as the finale of the, and I get it, very expensive sequence if they had created it in whatever, adaptation capacity they're going to do of any of this kind of final confrontation, which I don't know if they will, but like the end of this show didn't feel all that momentous to me in some ways. Like character-wise, I think there's a lot of cool stuff happening, but as far as like big moments, which Jordan loves ending his books with these big like battles, and that's kind of like you said, like realizing the potential of what like these super powerful magical beings could be, that a lot of series kind of hold back and they're like, oh yeah, we'll see that at the very final battle. We're constantly getting at the end of this, like we're seeing Rand continue to be like incredibly powerful, and I have not seen that in the show yet. We've seen
I think
flashes of it.
Yeah, I think the focus has shifted, because I would say that like the Moraine fight against Lanfear in the desert was very fucking cool. There was big magic happening. She's harnessing this Sangreel's power to go up against Lanfear. Right, she ends up. Land shows up, gets a cut in. His sword is the one that Lanfear drives into Moraine, which is what she'd seen in a lot of these prophecies. So I guess it kind of fulfills the prophecy, even though she doesn't end up dying from it.
But Moraine also gets like she's like cutting into the shield, and I'm like, damn, his sword is really like, it's like anti the one power almost. Like it's like got like an edge on all that.
It's got
stuff.
Something magical to it, maybe, right? This is supposed to be the sword that was put into his infant hands by his father when he was taken out of what is it, Malkir.
They call it something too. What do they call it? A power something blade, power
forged blade, maybe
rot,
something like that. Yeah, that
something
sounds right.
Like that. So I think it's cool that like he continues to introduce elements that are like, while the one power seems incredibly powerful, people like Min and Perrin and these like blades and things like that. Like there's all kinds of different aspects of being powerful in this world, and it's not just like who can channel.
Really cool sequence. I do think it's like the sort of logic of it is a little messy. Yeah. Like why Lanfear goes here, why does she even fight Moraine out in the desert? Like why does she care? Like I don't know. Some of it's a little confusing, but I'm all right with it. Again, it's a show that's having to just speed everything up, and it can't explain everything fully, so it just happens, and it ends up being cool. So really cool. I think it works.
So speaking of things that are expensive, that I didn't think we were gonna get, the Aelfinn show up.
Yes,
with Matt.
We got to talk about. Yeah. So, what are your thoughts? So we talked about in the books how this is like a really important part of the books. Especially for Matt, like this is like one of the most iconic sequences he has. It's very big going forward for him as a character. We had been missing that it hadn't happened yet in the show. He doesn't go to the Aiel Waste, which is where it happens in the books. It's at Moghedien. He's with Rand in Moghedien in kind of like a surprising way. And this all gets moved to Tanchico, and it happens kind of out of the blue when they're there fighting these Black Aja. Like it doesn't seem like it's really set up super well to me, but when it happens, he goes through this arch. And the other reference we do get is that we know that Elida once went through this arch back in the day. So that's something that was revealed in the show.
I didn't know if it was that arch specifically or another
it's
arch.
the same arch, yeah. It's the big red arch.
The red twisted arch, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so he goes in and he meets them. What did you think of this sequence and how it was portrayed on the show?
I thought, honestly, kind of best case scenario for an adaptation for this stuff. I was almost thinking of like when an alien abduction happens and like you're on this ship that you don't know what's going on and these aliens have knowledge. That's almost like what I was imagining for like going through this portal where like he's out of water. He has no idea. These people are like unlike anything he's ever seen before. But it was just done on like such a small scale for the sake of budgetary reasons and the show, I assume. Like there's not a bunch of them. First of all, we don't see snake people. I think it's fun to see an Aelfinn. Looks fucking wild. Yeah. I don't know what to say much about that.
I both love and hate the look. I'll say like there were parts of the look, like the costuming, the shit he's wearing is all really cool. When it shows the wide and we see this being walking on these crazy shoes, and he's like all tall and lanky and strange, and the teeth are all sharp and pointed, and there's so much unsettling about it. And then there's the close-ups of the face where this character looks like it's straight out of the Cats movie.
Oh, well, I was gonna say that. Yeah,
and I just
Jellicle cats, man.
they're what have we done? Like everything else about it is working so well, and then it just looks like a cat's figure to me. I don't know. Maybe it works better for other people, but for me, that was like it kind of took me out whenever I saw that. I was like, oh no, we didn't get any of the elongated like fox-like appearance. Instead, it's just like a human face with a bit of the hair around the edges to indicate, I guess, fox-like, but the nose is all otherwise, human. And I know that's hard to do, prosthetics and stuff, and maybe would look too weird or something, but like, I don't know, the weirdness of that kind of is important to me. I would have liked to see an elongated fox-like snout.
I agree, yeah. To give them credit, I do like that they did a lot of the major lines and beats of the actual scene when like the things that he's saying, the way they're reacting to it. They did the thing. They did the scene that we needed to see. It didn't feel as like mystical and epic as it did in the book.
Not quite. But, it comes out of fucking nowhere. If you don't know it's coming in the show, you're probably like, "What the hell is this?" Yeah. And so I guess there's that element of it. It doesn't feel as like because he didn't have the previous conversation with the snake people. Now I'm wondering if we might get snake people in a future, like if we were going to do some like swapping because things play out a little differently, right? We get him hanging. But he's hanging from the arch. He's rescued by Min and not Rand. It's Rand in the books. And he doesn't have his weapon, which is a name I can't remember how to say. It's like a Shindaroy or something. I don't even know what it was. It's something. There's a name for this weapon.
I thought that it may have been what he was hanging from. No, it didn't fall down.
He's hanging from the arch. No. He doesn't have it.
Okay.
Then it is revealed that he has the fox head amulet though, and so yes. that is true for both.
So one other thing that I noticed that feels very different. Again, we got this early in the fourth book, so we got a version of this early in the fourth book to where he had already like kind of asked some questions, had some answers, knew what he needed to do, and then when we get it in, when we get the Ruidian scene. He comes out and we get a fair amount of Matt after that where like he's having these memories of battles long gone and all this other stuff. And I have to assume, I'm just putting pieces together as a narrative storyteller, that if Rand is a reincarnation, there's other people who are reincarnations. I think that like Matt is seeing his past lives in some capacity. So whoever this is, whatever we're seeing, is possibly Matt in another life, in a different turn of the wheel. But in this version, he gets out and he has forgotten everything.
Yeah. So that is the big difference. So in the books, he has these gaps in his memories, but admittedly, it is kind of unclear because he is already like starting to be able to speak the old tongue and seeming to remember things he shouldn't remember. But he wants to fill in. He wants to fill in these gaps in my memory. And they say, granted. And what they do is they fill his memories back up, but it's like it's full of these memories of other lives, like you said. Here, it's kind of the opposite. He comes out and he can't remember stuff. He's got gaps. He now has gaps in his memory, which makes me think maybe we are going back. That's what was my theory, is that maybe we'll see him go back. Maybe that's how he could get the weapon, which he still doesn't have.
Yeah, now that you say that, I think you're right. Because it's like the weapon... He's going to be, if he's got gaps in his memory, he's going to want to fill those in. Totally makes sense for him to go back again.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if that's something being set up for another season, because ultimately I thought this was pretty good, if not quite as impactful as I would have liked it to be.
I also want to see way more. I get that they're like kind of holding things back because they want these like big fan moments to have more impact in later seasons, but like I want way more Lucky Matt.
Yeah, they have not leaned into the luck stuff enough.
I want way more Perrin with his wolf stuff. I all of that needs to be played up like way more in the next season. I would say like that needs to be remedied as soon as possible, especially because we just don't know how many more seasons we're gonna get.
We don't. Hopefully this isn't the last one. A few more big moments we got to talk on before we make our final judgments. Balefire gets shown for the first time on screen. I felt like this was something where it's like Rafe Judkins was like, we got to make sure to show some Balefire, and boy did it deliver. It actually was better than I could have hoped. I thought this was great,
especially for people who know the lore and the book stuff about like how it like kind of deletes you.
It deletes you. It unweaves you from the wheel and the weave and all this stuff, and like the way that was shown on screen. First off, she's shooting that thing like a Ghostbuster, trying to like bring bring the fucking whatever that is thing ceiling, down. Yeah, it's like shooting the roof. She can't point it.
Yeah. Cross the streams. Yeah,
hilarious. Yeah, and we're worried about crossing the streams. And then Elaine comes in, zaps her with it, and just the way that looked was incredible. What an awesome sequence, right? Like she comes apart. She like her image goes back in time to where she was previously. And so we see it like reversing course and all this stuff. Like it's so cool. I love the way that looked. It was one of my favorite like effects moments from this entire season for sure.
Just attention to detail and really understanding what's going on, the power, the lore of Jordan's world here. And I love how Elaine comes in, kind of blasts her, and then snatches it out of the air and is like, "Let's see it," and uses it. And like I'm like, Elaine is fucking bad. I love Elaine. So
it's cool.
It's cool. And then she saves Tom doing it.
Mm-hmm.
We got to talk about Nynaeve here with the Leandrin.
That was the other one I was going to say. We got to talk about here. So she gets tossed in the water by Leandrin. This is not something that happens in the book. Wrapped in a chain, thrown in the water, and is drowning. And she's able to push through her self-imposed block, which is something that is revealed in the Moghedien scene, which, by the way, is in both book and show. Her saying, like, I'm afraid of it, and that's why I'm blocking myself. And there's, like, this moment of truth that comes out in this scene, which is also really cool.
Moghedien in the show, too, is like, we would have beaten you out of that out of you in
it's
my
in both.
day.
That's in both book and show. Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's in both.
That.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's like, in the past, we would have beaten that out of you, which is awesome.
Yeah. Really wild.
No, it's a really cool moment. And it's a big effects moment. We get to see her, like, come walking out of the water. Very cool. I think this is something that, again, is an accelerated timeline. Rafe Judkins has realized, like, Nynaeve being self-blocking and not being able to channel when she needs to is something that goes on for a while in the books. Yeah. And we're like, let's kind of like move this along and get past it, I think, in the show.
I mean, I talked about that last episode or the episode before. I was like, she's got to come out of this soon. And so if it does continue in the books, that is a bit frustrating. But I was also unclear if she is going to always be unblocked now in the show. Mm-hmm. Like, is it like, or is it going to be like most of the time, that kind of thing?
I think that's a fair question to have. Yeah. Is this like, is she fully out of it now?
I did also see Judkins talk about this at one of the end of the episode kind of roundtable things. And he mentioned how he liked the way that they built this scene because Nynaeve kind of saves herself because she's talking to, she has like the flashback to herself in the arches for the White Tower, and how like she's telling her daughter like to just let go, like this and that, or what is she? Do you remember what she said?
I don't remember exactly what it is now.
She's giving her daughter advice, and basically she takes that her own advice in that moment and kind of saves herself and like breaks out of this, and like in that way she's kind of like breaking through those like self-imposed restrictions she's had on herself up to this point.
Now, I don't remember how this goes down exactly in the books, other than I think it is kind of similar. So I'll be curious when we actually encounter that in the books, like how much it is similar, because I just don't remember. Yeah, I think a cool moment. I think it's smart to move it up here, and it gives Nynaeve a big moment, which like I feel like she deserves, that she otherwise wouldn't have had.
She does kind of have a little bit of like a back and forth with Moghedien.
Yeah, I like there was that one moment where she like is fighting her, and she's like, "Oh, are you fighting me?" And like that was kind of surprising. I don't think that's in the book, so I thought that was a cool little addition. And it shows that she is supposed to be like a particularly powerful channeler, the most powerful woman channeler in 1,000 years, is what Leandrin says. Yeah. Which, by the way, also Leandrin is saying that she wants to become one of the chosen. She's like, I want to be a Forsaken, and so because of that, I know that we have to like eliminate some so that the slot opens up essentially. So she's talking to Moghedien about that, and it seems like maybe her and Moghedien might be like having some sort of alliance. They're both like, she's like, I don't work well with others, and she's like, neither do I. And they kind of look at each other like, oh, well, maybe this will work.
Originally, it seemed like Leandrin was working for Lanfear, and then now it's shifted to Moghedien. And Moghedien did kill Samael.
Yeah. Definitely quite formidable. And one other scene I want to talk about before we make our judgments here. Moraine talking with Rand. I thought this was a really impactful bit of acting and just an emotional sequence where we're really showing, you know, just the chops of Rosamund Pike. And it reminds me a little bit of like season 2 when she's in front of the entire, council at Tarvalon, right? And she has this really emotional moment. And here it's her talking with Rand about like, she says, I've always been the knife at your throat. And the way she's like, my goal is to get you to the last battle. And if at any point along the way, I thought you were going to go mad or be corrupted or, go over to the dark, like I was going to kill you. And I love how he's like, good. Like, this is what I want. He's like, we want the same thing then. Because he's like, I don't want to be corrupted. I don't want to lose myself. I want to make it to the last battle. And so he respects that about her. And I just thought this was a really cool scene. It really felt like a goodbye. So I think they were really setting you up to like believe that she was going to die here at the end.
It's a big full circle, and something that I mentioned in past episodes. I like that like they're contentious with each other now because they're disagreeing, and like Rand has kind of found his own voice, whereas before she was telling him how it was going to be. And now it's come full circle to where like he respects her for what she's done up to this point. And she was going to be this unspoken hero always, but he sees her and like thanks her for what's happening and what's happened up to this point. And no one else really ever will or know what she's done unless he tells them. So I did like it. I thought it was like, it reminded me a lot of that scene that I really liked last week when we talked about Moraine and Lan talking about like, are we going to, does it matter if you're here tomorrow, the next day, like when we're all going to die at some point. And I like these big character moments and they're like, they're a bit subtle, but like to me, they feel so impactful because we're getting these characters communicating.
Big character moments, even if we're not talking about like a big plot moment.
It makes me feel like I'm watching The Wheel of Time. Like I want more of this. I want more time with these characters. More,
more of this. I agree. More scenes like this between characters. I love this stuff. Yeah, really good. Natasha O'Keeffe continues to kill it. She shows up in like just the different costumes they put her in continue to just be amazing. When she shows up to like interrogate Samael or whatever, and she's got this new crazy hat on, and she just looks so fucking cool. Yeah. She's so like high fashion and stuff. Like I don't know, it's amazing. I love her look. It's so good.
I also liked seeing her kind of like snap the relationship with Rand. Like there was a moment where he's like, "I'm done with you," and she like freaks out, and you're like, "Oh shit!" She's always been capable of this. We knew she was torturing Egwene, like a lot of the fucked up stuff she's doing, but she's not getting her way. She's gonna start wielding the one power in a crazy way.
So that reminds me of one other thing we got to talk about. Avienda, in the books and a little bit in the show too, developing this situation with Rand where she's teaching him about the Aiel ways and kind of monitoring him. She's been tasked by the Wise One to like stay with him at all times, and he thinks like, oh, she's spying on me for the Wise Ones. What are your thoughts on Avienda and Rand and that development?
Well, so what you're asking is the revelation I think that we get a little bit in the book is that like Rand is like wanting to thank her, so he goes to the wise or the maidens and then like wants to give her a gift or something like that, and then they give a gift and they're like all kind of playing coy about it, and then he gets it and then he gives it to her and she like is like whatever about it. She doesn't really care about it. But then it starts building into like they're all kind of pulling strings hoping that they're going to end up together. And I think that it could happen. I don't think we have all the evidence there. And there is supposed to be 3 women, and it seems like Lanfear is being broken off a little bit here, and she seems like a real Forsaken as much as she tricked me along the way. So I think Avienda could be a possibility. I mean, it just seems like that's what they're building to. Like having an Aiel be someone that Rand like is one of the 3 or whatever seems like a likely.
So I mean, you're talking about it. So what are the implications of that with what we've seen with Avienda so far in her romantic alignments?
Oh, right, yeah, the stuff with Elaine obviously too. So yeah, lots of threesomes and foursomes, I guess, and yeah, we'll see where it goes.
Well, and my point is just that if they are going that route, and we've talked about the poly rep they've been building in the show. They've been building up multiple. I mean, we've said this with Ruark, right? And the Aiel, and it's part of their culture. And so it's part of Avienda's culture.
Yeah, totally.
We could be building to trying to represent a poly relationship in a way that would be pretty groundbreaking for TV, I think, and to be taken in this sort of serious way. I don't know. I'm curious to see if they do it. It is unfortunate that Min has been sort of cut out of the situation, it seems like, in the show. People who really like Min and Rand together are like, what happened to Min? And it seems like maybe she's destined to have her storyline more intertwined with Matt's.
I'm excited to see what she's going to do with Siwan in the books, like where they're off to, what they're going to get up to, because that I hope we're seeing. Although she's not going to be with Siwan unless. Is Siwan going to have a loyal situation where she also survived a beheading? Mm-hmm. And like, I'm just kidding. There's no way.
Yeah.
I think Siwan's dead for sure. Loyal, I don't know. Jury's out. I'm a little skeptical. I'm like, I don't know. He fell into an unknown vat of darkness, so we'll see where that goes. But Min going forward, I'd like to see her like have a lot of cool adventures and stuff. And with the fact that she was connected to Rand, if she's not going to be, I hope she's still like, I hope she's not in the story just because she's a named character and then they changed a bunch of stuff and then she has nothing to do. I hope they have a very specific reason and thing that she's going to do going forward.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. So looking ahead, if this show gets renewed, I suspect next season will be another situation where we're adapting 2 books. I think they do book 5 and book 6, and it spills over into future books too. We're gonna pull some stuff from future books. We've already gotten into some books from future books, or some from stuff from other books, and also just remixing and changing things. I think that's what you have to do because, guys, like if you don't know. We're talking books 5 and 6 here, right? Is what we're moving on to. There's 15 of these things. we're at a third of the story. There's so much story that now, I think the reason there's so much story in the next 2 books that I think that's going to make enough for a season. But like after that, they're going to have to start like really advancing. There's some books where I think that lend itself to this more, but we might start getting like 3 books per season. And that's, if this thing continues to get renewed. I hope it does. I hope this is a story that goes on. It's obviously, so over the top, crazy fantasy that like it's not going to be for everyone. But I think the fans that are enjoying it are really enjoying it. And it seems like it's picking up new people all the time. I think people are hearing buzz and checking it out. And I just hope Amazon believes in this thing and keeps it going.
Yeah, there's a lot of good reviews out there, and I'm seeing buzz online and people getting into it. So it's like, even with its flaws, I think people are coming on board, and I am excited to see more of it. I selfishly hope that we get all of it.
It's got some challenges. It's got logistical challenges facing it.
Absolutely. And it's going to need a larger budget going forward. So they're going to have to negotiate that. I don't know what that looks like.
Magic just gets crazier as we go, man.
And next season almost needs to like wrap up what the end of this book does. Like it almost needs to like start with a bang of like all this
we
stuff
didn't really
happening,
get the whole rebellion in the tower. We just got this one scene with so on, but we didn't get the warders fighting themselves and like the younglings and all this stuff that happens. Like none of that really happened in the show. We need that.
Even the Aiel stuff, like it's like there seems to be like Rand is in the middle of like a big conflict moment and then we just cut off from that. Like I'll be interested to see what they do going forward with that. And good luck to us if they do adapt 3 books.
I know,
per
right?
season, because we're gonna be so fucked.
The next 2 books are quite big, so it'll be a challenge regardless. All right, man, we got to make our judgments here. Book versus show, and I guess we'll do books 3 and 4 as compared to season 3. And that's where we'll make our judgments. Do you want to start things off?
Yeah, it's not that difficult for me. I love so much of what they're doing in the show. They're making some major improvements. They may not have had to improve on if they had done things, more faithfully from the beginning, but that's the nature of adaptation, I guess, and the ripple effect that can come from some of this. I really feel like even Perrin at this point, I'm on board with. Like, I feel like I understand the characters. I think the actors understand the characters. I want to see them go on all the adventures that Robert Jordan like sends them on. But ultimately, Robert Jordan's stories are sending me on an adventure that I just can't like put down. I love reading through these books. I'm having such a fun time with it. It reminds me of some of my favorite fantasy books, and it's also like going to areas that some of those don't, and it really feels like its own thing at this point, as much as we've talked ad nauseum about the influences and Dune and Lord of the Rings and all these other things. I really do feel like he's finally developed it to, it's developed to the point where it's its own thing, and I want to continue it, and I'm all in. I'm going to be there at the final battle one way or another. So I'm taking the books in this case. They're just fleshing out with the Dragon Reborn and the Shadow Rising, and I'll go on record and say Shadow Rising is my favorite that we've read so far. Really, really good book.
Agreed. Yeah, man, I'm with you. I'll just say that there are things in the show that I do like better. There are choices that were made that I approve of. There are characters in the show who are just really shining in these roles, like show Alana, I think is better. Like, there's just, I could go through and find other instances of this. And if you listen to the episodes, it's in here, right? But ultimately, I'm with you, man. The books are better. They have more time. I think there are parts of this series where Sprawl really gets the better of Robert Jordan, and he has to like rein it in and figure out how to land this thing, and it takes him a little while. I think you could argue there is some bloat that happens. But I don't think we're quite there yet. I think we're still in prime Wheel of Time territory. So for now, I am confident in saying that I think the books are still the better version, even though I feel like this show has improved with each season, and this has been I think the strongest season yet. I don't know if we said that yet, but I think this was the strongest Wheel of Time season we've got so far.
100% agree. Yeah, it's definitely the best one.
Yeah. So a lot of fun. If you want to stick around to the very end, we're going to announce our special guest we are going to have on next week for a Creative Conversations episode. So we've only done 2 of these prior, one with Ted Chiang and one with Paul Tremblay. Stay tuned to the end of the episode where we reveal who we are going to be talking to next. But if you enjoyed our coverage of Wheel of Time, let us know in the form of a rating and review on whatever app you chose to listen on. If you're on YouTube, make sure to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment. Let us know how you feel about the show, how you feel about the changes, all of that. We're always excited to hear from people who are following along with us and who are fans of the Wheel of Time. We want to hear from you.
Yeah, and be sure to connect with us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, all of those at Ink to Film. You can find us really on any social media platform.
And if you'd like to support this podcast another way, we do have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/inktofilm. And on there, you can get access to bonus episodes that we release every month, including our most recent one, which is either out or will be out soon, on the War of the Rohirrim, the animated Lord of the Rings film that came out recently. You're going to want to hear us talk about that. We have a lot of thoughts. So if you want to hear that, we'd love to have you over on Patreon.
And thank you to Serious Beat for the use of our intro and outro music.
Also, I wanted to say, if you wanted to buy these books, if us talking about them has convinced you that you want to check out this series, we have links to all of the books on our bookshop. And if you support us by using our bookshop link, we get a little piece of that. It doesn't cost you any extra, but it helps our show continue. So check out our bookshop.org link in the show notes. All right, man, it's time to reveal our Creative Conversations upcoming guest. We are going to have on Edward Ashton, the author of Mickey 7, the book that made the Mickey 17 film. And we're going to get to ask him all the questions that we have about that adaptation. And man, I am looking forward to it.
Yeah, I can't wait. This is going to be a really fun one.
So if you are curious about that, if you've seen Mickey 17, we'd love to have you next week. If you haven't seen it, go see it. And then you can check out our episode. It's a fun one. It's a good movie. Fun book too. So definitely check it out. But that's going to be it for now. So until next time.
Keep adapting.